All right, everyone. Jeremy Knopf here with another episode of the Public Relations Declassified Livestream. And we've got a couple of interesting stories in the news we're going to break down from a PR perspective, as well as a couple of tutorials here. The first thing we're going to go ahead and talk about here is the news that broke over the weekend of the T app getting leaked. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with this particular story, in a nutshell, the T app, originally it was positioned as this app to kind of help women stay away from unsafe men. In reality, which everyone always suspected, but now since the leaks, it's become abundantly clear that it was not actually that. It was just purely a gossip app where people would basically slander some of the men they had dated or met. And so in a nutshell, what happened was this kind of ties back to the whole vibe coding thing, if you're familiar with that. They built this app where women could share their experiences with particular men. And it was a private app where you could not join unless you were a woman. And you had to submit a selfie and a photo of your driver's license in order to get access to the platform. Where they really messed up is whoever developed this platform, they didn't really put any real security measures in place. So all of these photos, the driver's license photos and the selfies, ended up being stored in a publicly accessible folder, right? So literally anybody could go to that folder and download everything there. In fact, some people even built special software programs to crawl that and basically download the entire contents of that folder. As a result of this, what ended up happening was somebody actually put a special searchable Google Maps up that listed the addresses of literally all of the users that were available in this leak. So now there's a map, and that was actually, I'm going to pull the segment title up here for a second. Take a look at the background of this photo. Those little things that just look like a whole bunch of shit over the top of the US map here, those are actually all individual map pins where one of the addresses is for one of the users. So I think it was like 72,000 users were exposed in this leak. Now, it has been presented as a hack. It's not a hack. It's just somebody coded this very poorly. They didn't follow any typical security protocols. So as if that wasn't bad enough, the following day or a couple days later, I think it was Monday, in fact, they had a second leak that then leaked all of the private messages between the users. Now, about, I think it was 6 days ago, I called this, right? When the T app came out, I said, hey, this is going to be a PR crisis. There's zero question here. Within 12 months, they are going to be facing a PR crisis and likely several lawsuits. That was something I was talking about over on X. And it was not 5 days later that they are literally now embroiled in a lawsuit. So initially my thought was a man or a number of men would end up suing the app and getting a subpoena for the user info due to defamation, right? Because you've got this app where people can just anonymously defame anybody and there's no real recourse. In fact, nobody can even get in to see it unless you're a female. So that's a huge legal liability, huge risk right from the word go. But what I did not anticipate happening was developers who have no clue what the hell they're doing, completely leaving the entire platform open to anybody who has a basic understanding of coding so that people can just come in here and find this information and do whatever. So as of yesterday, so far there is one class action lawsuit that is in motion against the T app. And this actually came from women who their data was exposed as a result of the breach, right? And again, I say the word breach. I would not call this a breach. I would call this really nothing different than leaving your purse out on a bus bench, right? Yeah, if you leave that out there, somebody's going to probably pick it up and maybe dig through it, see what's in there. Going into that is not theft. It's not breaking and entering. This was left out in public, which is exactly what happened with this folder. So the company has essentially failed on every level. They've alienated a number of demographics, and now they're getting hit from multiple angles. They're getting hit from the women who feel that they were violated because their information was exposed, and rightfully so, right? A company, if you're going to produce an app or a platform or something where people are going to enter their personal information, you have to ensure to the best of your ability that that information is protected. And in this case, it wasn't. Wasn't malice. It was just pure stupidity and incompetence. But on the other side of the coin, you also have the men who were being attacked and defamed with basically no means to defend themselves or even find out what the hell was being said. And like I said, now that the DMs have been leaked as well, it's very apparent that this app was not being used in the way that it was being presented, right? It was used basically to mock and defame people. So basically, this company is getting hammered from both women and men, and rightfully so, because literally everything that they have done has been a colossal fuck up. So let's say that you were to hypothetically find yourself in a situation like this, right? What would be the correct course of action? Well, one of the things that happened when this first came out is the company tried to play it off. They tried to shift the blame, right? There was a problem because of these, evil hackers. It was a problem because these people tried to expose these other people. And the reality is the problem 100% falls at the feet of the T app and their team of developers and cybersecurity folks. So when you're facing a PR crisis, you can't just come in and be like, oh, well, that problem happened, but that's not our fault at all. That's totally this other company. They screwed up, or this other person, somebody did something, so it's not really our fault, right? So to contrast this, there was a situation that I talked about on the live stream, God, I don't know, maybe at least a few months ago, where Cloudflare had a major outage. Cloudflare is a DNS service. If you're not technical, don't worry about what that means. It doesn't really matter. It's just a technical service for the internet. The details beyond that don't really matter. But they had a major outage that resulted in lots and lots of very high-profile websites going down. Now, a key part of that problem came down to some of the servers at Google that Cloudflare was utilizing. So this is pretty common practice. You've got a lot of big companies that have very large server farms. Google's got it. Amazon has Amazon Cloud. There's several companies that basically lease out servers for various things, right? And so in this case, Cloudflare was leasing certain Google servers as part of their workflow. And for whatever reason, those servers went down and it impacted everything that Cloudflare was running. And that ended up causing a lot of websites to go down, a lot of platforms, a lot of apps, all to go down because this DNS service was no longer working correctly. What Cloudflare did, which is the exact opposite of what the spokespeople for the T app did, Cloudflare came out and took complete responsibility. At no point did they say, oh, well, it's because we were relying on Google servers and Google failed. Like, at the end of the day, the problems in your company fall squarely at your feet. If you are not willing to take accountability for your fuck ups, then your PR crisis is going to get worse. Now, in Cloudflare's case, like I said, they took complete accountability. They took ownership of the problem. They didn't blame anybody else. And as a result of that, the public trusted them even more. Because look, mistakes are inevitable. Things are going to go wrong. Everybody knows that for the most part, maybe not in the moment, but people generally understand that. It's more about the response. How do you handle the problem? And in their case, they handled it very well. They earned more trust as a result of that. And that ended up being kind of an example of how to do this correctly, how to handle a crisis effectively. T did not do that. They blamed everyone else. And then, of course, this next leak came out, making the problem even worse. At this point in their situation, I really don't see a recovery here because knowing what the app was really being used for, it's not surprising that probably men are going to do everything they can to bring the downfall of this app. And I can't say that I blame them. On the other side, you have the women who now no longer trust this app and they won't be using it because there's already been 2 significant leaks. And this indicates that they don't really know how to code an app properly. They don't know how to implement the property security protocols. So it's unlikely that this app is going to see any new growth from this point forward. It just kind of blew up out of nowhere. Everyone was talking about it, and then boom, this all happens. So if you find yourself in a situation like this, the first step, like I said, the same way that Cloudflare did, you come out, you take complete ownership of the problem, you take the necessary steps to fix it, right? What could T have done differently? Well, if they had taken accountability, which they didn't, then the next step would be to bring in people who really understand this stuff well. Bring in people who know how to make an app secure, right? And have them do a deep and comprehensive audit of the entire code base, all of the security protocols, all of the administrative backend stuff, everything that could potentially result in a leak. You need somebody who is objective, some third-party entity to come in and evaluate this, find any other flaws, and fix them immediately, right? Something else that they probably could do, not could, they absolutely can, probably should, but will they? Probably not. They're probably just going to roll over and let this company collapse. But one of the other things they should absolutely do in this case is go set up some kind of a contract with some identity monitoring company, right? You've got like LifeLock where they'll scan your credit and keep an eye out for anything. With this leak, you've basically got the entire world of the shadier side of the internet, the scammers, the con artists, the identity thieves, all of that. All of that information now exists in mirrored databases. Like you can download all of the content of these leaks in multiple places. The genie's out of the bottle. It's not going back. So what T needs to do is come up with some kind of a relationship with one of these companies like a LifeLock or somebody. And of course, they can even negotiate reduced rates, right? Where the company is going to pay for everybody's monitoring for the next 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, whatever it is. And that will help these people to be protected from identity theft, right? That would be a good way to start restoring some trust. And then from there, they need to address kind of how they're going to minimize or eliminate some of the problematic behavior on the platform, right? If this is an app supposedly to keep women safe, then you focus any of the content around legitimate safety issues. But, gossip and defamation and all of that has to get stomped out. Otherwise, this app is going to continue to be exactly what most of the public thinks that it actually is. So they're in kind of a bad situation here. They've handled everything incorrectly up to this point. There are a few things, like I just discussed, that they can do to try to fix the situation. Ultimately, at the end of the day, I don't think they're going to do anything. I think the company is going to fall apart. I think they're going to collapse. They're just not going to, they're certainly not going to maintain the traction they had just a few days ago. But I doubt that they're ever going to start to see a significant upward trajectory on their downloads and user activity anytime soon. So if you find yourself in that situation, like I've talked about in previous episodes, first step is taking full accountability. Second step is fixing the problem. And the third step is outlining how you're going to prevent that problem from ever happening again. So far, T has done none of these, and I think that's going to spell the end of the company. All right, so we're going to go ahead and roll into the next segment here, which this is kind of an interesting topic, and I've talked about this a little bit before. This is something called the Streisand effect. And basically what happens is when you approach certain PR situations the wrong way, that can result in the situation getting even more exposure, getting even bigger, and having a greater impact on you. Now, the Streisand effect comes from the outcome of attempts to suppress information that ends up increasing awareness of that information. And this was a term that was coined in, I think it was 2003, after Barbara Streisand. A lot of people may not know who she is anymore. She is at least at one point, a very famous singer. So she attempted to suppress the publication of a photograph that showed her clifftop mansion in Malibu. Now, there was nothing nefarious here. Nobody was trying to dox her or, anything crazy like that. This was a photo that was used in basically a report or a document where they were trying to highlight the coastal erosion in California. And so they were using kind of before and after photos of her mansion to show the coastline erosion, right? And so she didn't want that out there for whatever reason. And frankly, there's plenty of legitimate reasons not to want that out there. So what she did was they started doing everything in their power to suppress that, right? To get that to go away, to get people to stop talking about it because she didn't want that information out there. Unfortunately for her, that made the problem exponentially worse. As she tried to silence people talking about it, then they started talking about that, which then turned into a number of other kind of spin-off topics. And the deeper she got into this, the more aggressively she fought. And then the louder the whole story became, the more people that saw it. And it had a very bad impact for her. You really can't suppress anything per se without absolute scorched earth. I'll give you guys a few examples here in a minute. But what brought this topic back to the kind of the front of my mind was two stories, which I've been covering lately. One is the whole Blake Lively thing. Now, if you've seen that, if you've been following some of my work on her PR crisis, there was a new development, I think it was last week sometime, where she came out and for all of you who've been following this, you've heard me talk about what a mess Lively has made trying to manage her PR crisis with this Justin Baldoni situation. Basically, she's run out of straws to grasp at here. And last week she subpoenaed, I think it was 20 or 30 independent creators, including one who was just, some young lady with a little bedazzled microphone, right? A little spatula as a microphone. And I think she had a whopping total of 1 subscriber. So Blake Lively is out here suing content creators who are talking about her situation, who are talking about her handling of it. Blake Lively, where's my subpoena, by the way? I'd like one. She's been suing all kinds of people, trying to get them to shut up. And all that's done is make the story bigger. I honestly am surprised I have not got a subpoena for this yet. The other story that's been in the news that you guys have probably seen that ties into this Streisand effect is the astronomer situation. So if you're not familiar with that, it was the CEO and the HR manager of a company called Astronomer. They were caught having an affair on the Jumbotron camera, right? So little cameras panning around through the audience, and they zoom in on these two folks who are like kind of, cuddling and dancing a little bit while they're standing up here. And as soon as that camera hit them, they freaked out, turned around, crouched down underneath the seats, and basically told the whole world that they were having an affair by doing that. And so huge PR crisis for the company. The CEO had been put on a leave of absence. I don't remember the exact terms of that, but the HR manager also ended up being put on leave as well, if I remember correctly. But basically, they have unleashed this tsunami of memes and jokes about the topic. Everyone's been laughing and joking about it. But the CEO is now trying to sue Coldplay, right? That's the band that was playing the concert that they were at. He is now trying to sue Coldplay for causing damage to his reputation and his marriage and all of that. Look, at the end of the day, Coldplay didn't do shit. This guy that can't keep his dick in his pants is 100% to blame for 100% of his problems. Suing Coldplay is stupid, and it ties into the Streisand effect, because what you're doing when you do that is you're just trying to silence people. You're trying to bully them into shutting up, and it almost always backfires. There are a few cases where giant companies or very wealthy individuals have used that tactic and it worked, but it's very rare. It's kind of like very edge case scenarios where it works. Definitely did not work in this case. So, of course, when he announced that he was going to sue Coldplay, that initiated a whole new string of people talking about it on social media, articles being written, TV segments being produced. So it just keeps making the story bigger and bigger and bigger. Now, there are cases where you can silence people, you can suppress information, but it requires a scorched earth approach, right? You have to completely destroy that person in order to make that happen. You have to be willing to do things that you probably would not and frankly should not be comfortable doing. But there are some cases where bad people need to be taken down, especially if it's defamation, slander, libel, all that. And when you do that, you have to basically treat it like a war. You have to go all in. You have to kind of take your emotions out of the game. And if you're going to do this, look, make sure you're 100% right. If you're wrong, just own up, fix the problem, and move on. But if somebody's out here defaming you and you absolutely want to suppress them, there are absolutely some great ways to do this. One of the things I like to do is I will buy that individual's name as a domain name and then tell the real story, right? Show who they really are. And this is very effective because it gets to people at a very core level. So there was a guy a few years back, God, this was probably 20 years ago at this point. He came to our company for a whole bunch of services, and I really should have turned him away as a client, because when he first came to me, he was bragging about all of the contact lists and SOPs and all the stuff that he stole from his employer before he left. Just not a good person. And then once he got all of this work done by us for his new company that he was starting, he then turned around to his credit card company and disputed all of the charges. So that did not sit well with me. He tied up a very large amount of cash flow in doing that, right? He was basically for every dispute, and we're talking a nice size 5-figure price tag between all of the work that we did for him. So basically that's now tying up tens of thousands of dollars in our revenue, because he went and disputed stuff with the credit card companies. Now, of course, we ended up winning every single dispute because we had all the evidence that we did everything the way it was supposed to be done. He was happy with it. He liked it. And then it was just once he realized he had kind of bitten off more than he could chew, and he wasn't really suited to run a business, he figured he could get away by stealing money from us and just disputing the charges. So I put up a website about him, bought his first name and last name.com, and then put up a website basically showing all of this information. We put up all of the documentation, all the communication with the credit card companies, the various communication where he had bragged about stealing everything from his employer, all of that. Now, this is great because these tend to rank very well because most people's name is not a highly competitive term. There's not a lot out there trying to rank for that. So if you have a situation where someone is defaming you or trying to hurt you in some way and you need to try to suppress them, this is a great way to do it because you can tell the full story. The site will tend to rank very easily. Usually it will be on the first page, typically the first half of the page. And everyone who searches for their name is going to find that, right? It's going to show up in the first page of the search results. So people generally want this problem to go away very quickly. So it does give you a lot of leverage. He even went as far as having his lawyers send threatening letters, which I then took those letters, screenshots of those letters, and even a PDF of the letters, and uploaded them to the website, right? And highlighted, the fact that he's trying to suppress this information. So we just went all in, and this did get him to stop his bullshit eventually. So you can do the same thing if someone's out here defaming you. You can put something up. You can put all that information there. It will rank well, but only do this if they are legitimately lying about you, if they're legitimately trying to hurt you using some kind of ethical means. But if you're just trying to shut up a story that you don't like, don't do it because it's only going to make the situation worse. Now, you can drown it out with other publicity, though. So the circumstances are going to dictate the strategy. So let's use Streisand as an example. So she could have gone on a big PR blitz, and with her name, it would have been very easy, right? Her publicist could have pitched something to a dozen outlets and probably got 11 of them to jump on it at that time. She was fairly popular, definitely an A-list celebrity. So if they had gone out on a little blitz, they could have got a lot of publicity that would now drown out what's out there. And so what I would do, she's trying to suppress this story about her house. Well, now you go out and you do this PR blitz about all kinds of things related to the home. So you might talk about cooking. You might talk about interior design. You might talk about gardening, right? All of these different things that relate to the home, so that now, as these articles and these TV segments start to come out, now let's say somebody goes and they Google Barbra Streisand home. And maybe they think they're going to find pictures of her Malibu beach mansion. Instead, they find all of these new articles talking about what she's doing in her home. And that image of that mansion are no longer at the top of the search results. Now, in a PR crisis, right? So in her situation, it wasn't a PR crisis until she caused it to be. But let's say you are in a PR crisis, right? Like something like the T app that we talked about in the last segment. If you're in a PR crisis, you have to be even more delicate, right? There's a lot of things that you can't do in the middle of a PR crisis that you ordinarily could do. There's certain things you absolutely need to do in a PR crisis that you don't necessarily in other times. So, for example, I've got a PR crisis that I've been working with a client on for a bit. He's definitely getting unfairly represented in this story. But what I'm doing is, because it's a local issue for him, I am entirely avoiding all local media. It's a local story, so local media is going to want to cover that. They're going to want to talk about that thing. They're not going to want to talk about anything else. So we avoid local media entirely, especially since they're more likely to already know about that story as well. What I might do instead, and we've done this in some of the pieces we've put out for him, topics like negotiation, handling conflict, or building and nurturing business relationships, things like that, where we can maybe talk about some of the issues that are going on in this particular PR crisis without addressing the crisis itself. But now we're getting all of this additional information out there that's likely to show up in the search results if someone happens to look for his name. We just have to be really careful about who we engage with, what we say, and how we say it. So if you find yourself in a situation where there's a story out there about you, you don't like it, it doesn't present you in a favorable light, if it's not true, just get out there and start putting out a ton of publicity on other topics, especially if you can tie the original topic into the new other topic, because now you kind of drown out that stuff in the search results. Just don't try to suppress or shut people up, because that's almost never going to work. Doing it effectively requires having done it before, really knowing how to do it effectively, because there's, like I said, there are right ways and wrong ways to do that. But also, like I said, it's not a thing you want to do in every situation. You only want to try to suppress them if they are legitimately lying about you. And even then, that's not always the right course. But generally speaking, I advise you not to try to suppress people, right? Just get out there, tell your story, put the positive stuff out there, and keep doing what you do, keep doing what you're great at. And over time, that problem will go away. All right, so the next topic we're going to talk about is how to avoid one critical mistake that most people make with PR. Now, this is, in one sense, it's counterintuitive. On the other side, I guess it could also be considered kind of common sense. But the mistake that I see people make is making publicity all about themselves. And that may sound counterintuitive, because you're out here, you're telling your story, you're sharing your knowledge, you're talking about yourself and who you are and what you do. But at the end of the day, it's not about you. It's about the audience. And everything that you say, everything that you do needs to be looked at through the lens of bringing value to that audience. So it's a lot easier than most people realize to kind of make it about themselves. So when we do it from the perspective of an audience, though, that comes down to how we position ourselves and how we phrase things. Now, if you get it wrong, the best case is you just get ignored. Not the end of the day. The worst case is you don't get that interview, you don't actually get featured, and of course that wastes your time. Possibly, depending on how bad the interaction was, you may burn that relationship, and if it's bad enough, you may even end up getting put on a blacklist. So basically, let's say you pitch a journalist. Something I see a lot is, oh, well, you should feature me because I did XYZ. I was the first person to build this kind of company, or I was the first, person to invent this thing, whatever. Like that generally doesn't really matter. Nobody cares about that. So instead, you frame things around how a particular situation or a particular piece of data is going to affect their audience. So, for example, I was just talking to a friend of mine a few days ago. He is in the real estate industry and focuses on what's called distressed properties, right? He'll buy homes out of foreclosure, or go to the banks and find their REOs, their real estate owned, right? The stuff they've already foreclosed. Then he goes in and he tries to find these properties, buy them before they default, and then rehab them, flip them, do all that stuff. So if I was going to pitch him to a journalist, I wouldn't pitch it from the perspective of, oh, I do all this stuff and here's why I'm great. I would pitch it from the perspective of, here's what's going on in the foreclosure world, X% increase, right? X amount of dollars are going to be lost from the market because of this, like various pieces of data that matter to that media outlet's audience. So I will open up with that, right? Talk about the direct impact. Then I'll talk about how his expertise can help their audience avoid whatever problems come with that data, right? So we're doing this from an audience-focused perspective. And in doing that, you're showing the journalists that you really understand their needs and their audience's needs. And you're far more likely to get that interview and end up getting featured. Whereas if you approach it from the other perspective, hey, here's all the things I accomplished, here's all the awards that I've won, here's this, here's that, that approach just doesn't work. So I like to approach this from the perspective of always trying to add value. So useful or actionable information is a great way to do this. So you might tell them how to do something. This might be a tutorial or a step-by-step process where you're showing them how to perform a certain task or how to achieve a certain goal, something like that. You can also talk about what not to do. So, I talk a lot when it comes to PR about what not to do. I talk about the mistakes people make and the impact that those mistakes can have on them. So when you talk about this, you're now helping people to avoid a particular problem and the negative consequences that come from that problem. So that's another great way to do this. You can also talk about what they should do. So there was a lot of talk about this CTA BOI regulation. I think it was like sometime late last year or early this year. And our friend Carol Roth was talking a lot in the media about what business owners should do in regards to this particular law, right? There were certain things that had to be done, and this was a federal law, certain things that had to be done in order to be in compliance. Otherwise, you would face massive, massive penalties. And this was something that was kind of concocted behind the scenes. Nobody ever really announced it. It just was this quiet regulation that was going to result in hundreds of dollars of fines every day for noncompliance. So something that definitely adds up pretty quickly and affects business owners. So she talked about what business owners should be doing. And one of the things, of course, was doing the various steps to comply with it. But the other thing was talking to your local elected officials, right? Talking to your lawmakers, telling them that this is bullshit, telling them that this shouldn't exist, telling them that you want this repealed, etc. And in telling people what to do and also what not to do, she got a ton of media coverage as a result of this. But the key reason that she got so much media coverage from this is she was bringing tremendous value to the audience by helping them to comply with this stupid law, which did end up getting eventually repealed. Also by telling them what to avoid, right? What not to do, right? What should you not do? You should not just ignore this. You should not just not file, right? So she gave very valuable information to the audiences of all of these media outlets. And as a result of that, she got a ton of media coverage. Unique insight is another great way to bring value to the audience. So, I've talked a lot about some of the changes in PR, especially around how AI plays into the industry. And that has given me a lot of great media opportunities. I was on NASDAQ, for example, not too long ago. They have a TV show, if you're not familiar with it. But I was talking to an audience of, Fortune 500 type companies and above on a nationally syndicated show, talking about the importance of AI from a PR perspective and making sure that you are showing up in these LLMs that power the AI tools like Grok, ChatGPT, Perplexity, things like that. I also wrote an article for Entrepreneur Magazine about this, and I'm bringing that unique insight to their audience to give them information that they absolutely need. But if they're not in my unique position, if they don't have my background, if they don't do what I do every day, they're not going to have that same insight. So by me bringing my insight to the table, that creates value for their audience, making me far more likely to get featured in the media. Hence the article at Entrepreneur, hence the TV segment with NASDAQ. So bring your unique insight. You've got a perspective on things that nobody else does. You know things that most other people don't know. And so leverage that to your advantage. And then kind of tangentially off of that, of course, is predictions. This is something I used to do a lot of when I was in the SEO industry years ago. I would talk about what the engines were going to do, how things were going to evolve. And there was never a time that I was wrong, which looking back is kind of crazy. But you have unique insight. You have access to lots of data in your industry. You see things both at the higher kind of strategic level, but also down in the trenches on the ground. And so you are going to be able to make predictions that a lot of other people can't. And those predictions can be super valuable for their audience, but they can also be awesome for you, because let's say you predict something. Like I predicted this whole tea thing. It was 6 days ago today. If you predict a thing and then it plays out exactly the way that you said it would, that is a huge boost for your authority status. And the really cool thing about that is you can then leverage that, of course, in everything you're doing, but also use that when you're pitching your next prediction, right? If I go to a journalist and I, let's say some company does something and I look at what they did and I was like, okay, I think they're going to have a PR crisis. If I go and I pitch that story to a journalist and then I can highlight, my coverage of the T app, I can highlight my coverage of Liberty Safe, my coverage of Bud Light, these various PR crises that have happened that I've covered. And many of them, I started talking about it before it was even actually a PR crisis, right? It was like there was just one little piece of data or just a little thing happened that I felt was going to lead to the bigger thing. When you've got a track record of that, that makes you infinitely more valuable to the media. And they really love to run with that, right? They'll frame you as the guy or the girl who accurately predicts XYZ, whatever. You see this a lot in the media. The guy, I can't for the life of me remember his name, but he was the traitor. I think Christian Bale played him in some movie. If anybody knows what movie I'm talking about, go ahead and drop something into the comments or into the chat. But there was a movie where he came in and predicted the global housing collapse in 2008, right? So now, whenever anything happened, and by the way, when he predicted that, everybody said he was stupid, he was crazy, he didn't know what he was talking about. That dude went and borrowed so much money. I take that back, not borrowed money, but he leveraged this financial play, and that's not an industry that I'm in, so I probably am not explaining this very well. But basically, he went and invented a security, basically betting on a collapse of the housing market, and made billions doing it. So now, whenever anything financial happens, a lot of journalists reach out to him. They want his insight. They want to know what he thinks about a situation, simply because he predicted this and was right about everything about it and nailed it so perfectly. So this is an incredibly powerful approach. Just don't get too outlandish. Don't go too crazy trying to come up with something crazy and exciting. Just stick to what you really believe. But if you can make some solid predictions that come true, that can be a huge lever for you in your public relations that will give you exponentially more impact. All right. So what we're going to go ahead and do now is we are going to talk about Jeremy's PR PSA. And that is sometimes the only path to win positive public perception is all out war. So you need to be 100% committed to telling your brand story. Now, this comes from a few different stories that have been in the media lately. But one of the things that I see people get wrong is they will have a situation where public sentiment turns on them for whatever reason. And it may not be huge. It may just be a little thing. But then they kind of spin out of control and they comment on it. They're definitely not liking the situation, and they're being very vocal about that. But they kind of lash out, but they do so half-assed, and they don't really, often they don't have a strategy. But beyond that, they often will kind of lash out a little bit here and there and then go back into hiding. And that's understandable, because when you're getting attacked, it's really easy to kind of feel dehumanized. You've got all these people who don't know you, and they're saying the worst things in the world about you. So what a lot of people will do is they'll come out and they'll lash out at a few people, and then they'll go back into hiding. And in doing that, you're not really gaining any ground. You're not convincing anyone. You're not converting anyone. all that you're doing is kind of dragging the war, so to speak, out. So instead, if you're going to do it, you need to be all in. You need to jump in with both feet. You need to stay out there in the fray and just keep going at it until public perception changes and aligns with what you want public perception to be. If you go out here and just make a few kind of trial efforts and then keep giving up, what you're going to do is reinforce the negative perception. And because you're just kind of playing around the edges, you never get any real traction. So we want to avoid that. If you're going to stand up for your brand, and I believe you should, then go all in, right? No half measures. Absolutely own that fight and do everything you can, not just to win, but to create an environment where you absolutely cannot lose. All right, so that's going to be a wrap for today, guys. I don't know if we have any questions. Chris, if we have any questions, just go ahead and pop something up on the screen. But in the meantime, for those of you who joined us today, thank you for joining us. Love it. Okay, so Dr. K had a little to add here on the Jeremy's PR PSA. Yes, I agree with that 100%. No surprise. We tend to agree on most things. But yes, thank you for that. For anyone who's been watching today, first of all, thanks for joining us. Appreciate you guys checking this out. If you got something valuable out of this, I would love it if you would share this with somebody or share it on social media. And if you're not already in the group, go ahead and hit that QR code. I guess it's over here. There we go. Get that QR code up in the top corner. If you hit that with your phone, it will take you straight to our free Facebook group where we also, obviously we stream this into the group, but we've also got other stuff that we're sharing in there pretty regularly as well. Great group, great bunch of people, lots of people that you can connect with and collaborate with in there, in addition to the public relations knowledge that we share. So that's going to be a wrap for today, guys. Look forward to seeing you all in the next episode. And oh, by the way, if you did not see the post in the Facebook group, there was a few people who had asked me about doing this thing with content that we were talking about, where I am going to create some response videos to your questions. So if you have a PR or a social media or a marketing question, shoot me a quick video, nothing long, right? Like a minute or less. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a response video. I will include your video in the video that I create. So what I want you to do is introduce yourself, talk a little bit about who you are, what you do, what makes you unique, and then give me your question. Keep that whole thing under 1 minute. And then what I'm going to do, we've got a few of them in there already. I am going to make a response video answering each of your questions. So, and if you have multiple questions, that's totally fine. Just do separate videos for each question. That way I can make sure that you guys are also getting, in addition to getting the information, getting the answers to your questions, I want this also to create exposure for you. I want this to be something that, somebody comes across my YouTube channel or anywhere else that I've shared it. I want them to see you and see who you are, so that if they have a need for whatever it is you do, they'll reach out to you guys as well. So nothing fancy. You can just do like a quick little selfie on your phone, little selfie video, introduce yourself, who you are, what you do, what makes you unique, all that under a minute. And then I will create response videos answering all of y'all's questions. So that is a wrap for today, guys. Look forward to seeing you all in the next episode, and we'll see y'all later.